point two that I'd like to make, and that is that freedom is a broader category of opportunity than has ever been before, and it is under a broader and more profound attack than it has ever been before. Many of us take for granted our freedom to travel, our ability to communicate, our opportunities that come with modernity. We really are free in lots of ways that people haven't been at any time in history. But with the rise in technology, there has also been a rise in lethality. There are greater threats than we have ever before witnessed in the history of this country. Some of you have read David McCullough's book, 1776, and remember with me the Bostonians standing above the harbor watching the approach of the British fleet. And they sort of have this idea, if the wind doesn't change and all the conditions remain favorable, they'll be landing in an hour or two, and then they'll be making an attack on us. It took a nation to attack a nation then, and the delivery time for limited lethality was rather slow. It's as if they then turned to each other and said, let's run down to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee and see if the Brits show up if the wind doesn't change. At that time, if you would take a podium the size of this one, put it in a room like this, fill it with the most dangerous explosive, the most destructive instrumentality of technology at that time, and you were to set it off, yes, you would kill some people in the room. And yes, the rest would maybe be injured, or some going away with a ringing in their ears for weeks or maybe even a month. But today, the lethality of modernity has imposed upon us the necessity of guarding, safeguarding against an infringement of our freedom that could include a destructive capacity of a bomb to be detonated, placed in a container this big that wouldn't just destroy the lives of a few people in the room, it could vaporize an entire city. And so the requirement for us to be careful about freedom and to be circumspect in how we treat it and to safeguard it is elevated significantly. At one time, we could only threaten a nation with another nation, but now we know that a very few people releasing chemical agents or evil biology might threaten the very existence or success of a culture, and we know that the threats are very substantial. So we have this context of knowing and understanding the value of freedom. We know that freedoms have been expanded significantly, and we know that the threats to freedom have capitalized on technology to make it very difficult to defend against, and it proposes and places before us significant challenges. And I would go to my third point in that respect, and that is that whenever we seek to defend freedom, we do so in a way that enlarges our freedom. And if our freedom isn't worth more after we engage in a policy of trying to secure it, we ought to abandon the policy. Because if by seeking to defend freedom we shrink it, instead of have a greater freedom than we would otherwise have, we have lost a battle that's very important to us. So that I would propose this, that rather than trying to have a counterbalance to freedom with the idea of security, we understand that security is to enrich freedom and any policy. I think it would be a good test anywhere in our governmental system if what we are proposing doesn't mean that we'll have a better outcome for freedom with the policy than without it. We shouldn't have the policy, because freedom is this core value that means so much to the United States of America. I know when Wyatt Earp rode into Dodge, he didn't have to stop and go through a magnetometer at the edge of the town. But I like the freedom to travel, and I know that when I go to an airport, I involve myself in certain things that are designed to make my freedom usable and workable. And I believe that it's a valuable thing to have airport security. And it does make my freedom worth more if I can actually exercise it in safety than if I couldn't. And I believe that's the kind of test we need to have. Do we have, as a result of the things we seek to do for security, a freedom which is richer, enhanced, and worth more than a freedom we might have if we didn't? I submit that there's another little refinement on that test that we ought to engage in. And it's a refinement that comes out of the technical jargon of the law. That when very serious rights are involved, we measure things by a test we call the strict scrutiny test. It means that we tailor whatever we do in that arena as narrowly as is possible. And that we not only with that narrow tailoring, we make sure that we have it as limited an impact on the rights that we're seeking to secure. I believe that for policy reasons, that would be a good guideline, that whenever we're seeking to enlarge and enhance and safeguard our freedom, we do it in such a way that it is as limited as possible so that we maximize the outcome of liberty at the end of the day.